Hey guys, would you like to hear yourself on a future episode of Disney Coast to Coast? Well, if you're in the Southern California area on Sunday, May 20th, 2018, now is your chance. On Sunday, May 20th, I'll be hanging out at Walt's Barn in Griffith Park, California, recording the voices of visitors and chatting with them about their Walt Disney Barn experience. Also joining me will be the Pizza Planet truck for some great photo opportunities, so get your Instagram accounts ready for that. So that's Disney Coast to Coast, Walt's Barn, and Pizza Planet truck all in one place. That sounds like a win-win-win scenario to me. Of course, if you've purchased a Disney Coast to Coast t-shirt or Newsies cap in the past, be sure to wear them to the barn. There may just be a surprise there waiting for you. I hope to see y'all there.
Are you craving a trip on Space Mountain? Well, we've got the next best thing. Welcome to Disney Coast to Coast.
Hey folks, and welcome to Disney Coast to Coast, the ultimate unofficial Disney fan podcast. I'm Jeff DePauli, and in today's House of Mouse headlines, a red-headed pirate is headed to Disneyland, but not quite the way you're thinking. Star Wars Nites begins, and Frozen the Musical receives several Tony nominations. That and so much more, so let's get to it.
Hear the latest news from the Walt Disney Company in today's House of Mouse headlines.
First off, over at Disneyland, yes indeed, the red-headed pirate that we've wanted so much more of through the years is now coming as a meet and greet to Disneyland. Yes, we wants the redhead, and now we've got her. Of course, she's getting a bit of a new storyline now with the upgrade coming to Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean, which has already happened at Walt Disney World and Disneyland Paris. But this character is now a pirate, and her name is Red, spelled R-E-D-D, and you'll be able to meet her in New Orleans Square this summer at Disneyland Park. So this is kind of interesting to me because it seems like, you know, they're trying to change our minds about this character. Of course, a huge part of the reason why this change is coming to the ride is because of the whole trafficking of humans. And now they're like, okay, we'll pay more attention to the redhead, but she's a pirate now. But it's kind of weird, at least for me, having grown up with her as the character she was for so long in that attraction. It's going to be a very hard time thinking of her as a pirate. So it seems like they're trying to distract us with her change, but at the same time, to me, it just makes me remember the old character more. So it's kind of interesting to me, but all I can say is they better have some security for her when she's doing the meet and greets, because if you remember, Captain Jack Sparrow was, caught the attention of young women in the park, and I'm sure the same will be said for young men when the redhead comes to Disneyland Park. Now hopping over to the Esplanade, over to Disney California Adventure, the adorable Snowman Treats has opened over at the unfinished Pixar Pier. They're seeming to gradually open this land, even though it doesn't officially open until later in June. But the adorable Snowman Treats is ready and open, and they offer chocolate, vanilla, and lemon soft serve, as well as a Pixar Pier parfait, root beer float, and even the snow-capped lemon soft serve, which is essentially the lemon soft serve with some white chocolate sprinkles on top. It seems like they have more options, if I'm remembering correctly. Of course, this is just a rethemed ice cream shop that was previously part of Paradise Pier. But if I'm remembering correctly, before it ended, it was just chocolate vanilla and chocolate swirl options. So now we've got some more options and a new retheming of this ice cream shop on the new Pixar Pier. Also over at Disneyland, Star Wars Nights have officially begun. Of course, this past week included Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you all. And this Star Wars Night actually looked pretty darn cool. It's a special ticketed event after hours, and you know, there's a lot of those these days. It's part of these whole nighttime Disneyland events that they're doing, and Star Wars Nights seem to have been very, very successful. As I mentioned on last week's House of Mouse headlines, they actually added a third night because tickets sold so well to this, and they have some pretty cool stuff. I was watching video of it, and the March of the First Order is part of this, and of course, they do this over at Disney's Hollywood Studios. I'm a big fan of it over at Disney's Hollywood Studios. I'm equally as big a fan of it over at Disneyland because it starts up on the second level of the launch bay and marches its way down through Tomorrowland, and it's just so cool, and it's really interesting to me because, I mean, when all is said and done, it's a pretty fairly simple cavalcade of characters, yet there's something about it that creates like a really cool aura in the space, and I just love it. March of the First Order, huge fan. I hope it becomes part of Disneyland Park in general. They also, of course, had the Star Wars Celebrate the Night fireworks, which fireworks to a John Williams score is always an amazing thing, and from the video clips I saw, this looks fantastic. They had light speed projections all night long. The projectors that they put on Main Street for the 60th anniversary Disneyland Forever fireworks, they use a lot for other things. They've used it for Mickey's Halloween party and, even the Pixar fireworks this summer. It was a really good investment putting those projectors on Main Street USA. I think it's great. There are tons of photo ops, of course, and meet and greets for the Star Wars Nites. I gotta say one thing, though, and I remember this even as a kid over at Walt Disney World. I don't know if it's as common anymore, but the Ewoks were meet and greet characters, as they are for Star Wars Night at Disneyland. And one of my big complaints about this is that the Ewoks are human size. If you see, an adult woman go up to an Ewok for a photo, it's pretty much the same height. I don't understand why Disney isn't hiring little people for this, because I think it would be amazing to have photo opportunities with life-size Ewoks instead of human-size Ewoks. Disney, get on it. Come on, let's hire some little people and have Ewoks in the park. It would be fantastic. And another thing that is part of Star Wars Night and also becomes part of the daytime park as well is the return of Hyperspace Mountain. If you're a fan of Space Mountain, I am a huge fan of Hyperspace Mountain. I highly suggest, I know the lines are longer for this when you go to the park. If you haven't done Hyperspace Mountain, certainly do it. It's a fantastic overlay, and I highly, highly suggest it. Overall, Star Wars Night looked like a lot of fun, to the point that next time it comes around, I may consider buying a ticket to it. Staying with Star Wars, but hopping over to Walt Disney World, they have announced the Star Wars Rival Run, and this will be the weekend of April 4th through 7th, 2019. And basically, runners will choose which side of the Force they're running for during this. And there's going to be a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, and a Run Disney Kids race opportunity. So if you're into running and you're into Star Wars, get ready to plan your trip to Walt Disney World for April 4th through 7th of 2019. Now for some Walt Disney World news that seemed to have come out of left field. It has been officially announced that the Night of Joy event will not be returning to the park. And if you're not familiar with this event, it is a Christian music rock concert, several nights usually, that they hold at Walt Disney World. This event began in 1983 and for many years ran at the Magic Kingdom, later moved on to Hollywood Studios for a few years, and then headed to ESPN Wide World of Sports. And when Disney representatives were asked why this event was canceled, they simply said they continually change their offerings. And I don't know, to me, things like this don't get canceled unless there's a problem, which I haven't heard of any problems, or it's just simply not selling enough tickets. So my guess is maybe the popularity of the event has declined. I wouldn't be surprised personally, because to go from an event in the Magic Kingdom to an event at the ESPN Wide World of Sports, I mean, if I were a ticket buyer to that event, that would definitely affect my choice as to whether or not I would go. I wouldn't be as excited to go to the ESPN Wide World of Sports for a concert as I would to go to the Magic Kingdom. So maybe ticket sales just weren't doing as well as they had been in the past. The one thing I feel really bad about this announcement is there was no, warning about this. So last year, 2017, ended up being the final time for this event. And if you're going to get rid of something, and who knows, they probably hadn't made up their mind at that point, but I always wish that they would give the heads up to the people who have, perhaps been doing this since 1983 and had to make a decision last year. Do I go? Don't I go? I just wish that they gave people fair warning. This will be the last year for it. If this was your tradition, I'm sorry to tell you, it's gone now. So Night of Joy is not returning. Now let's hop over to Disney's Hollywood Studios, where, of course, they're getting ready to open Toy Story Land in June, and we got some video of a Wheezy animatronic. That's the little penguin that squeaks from Toy Story 2. He's been installed over at Toy Story Land. He is part of the Slinky Dog Dash. He's basically the finale to the ride, and you'll see this cool animatronic singing "You've Got a Friend in Me." And I gotta be honest, it looks pretty cool. It reminds me a lot of the Mr. Potato Head animatronic that we've seen in Toy Story Midway Mania. But I will say, I never really had any interest in riding Slinky Dog Dash. It's just always been a kid coaster to me. And I'm like, yeah, it's something skippable. Overall, I've pretty much been like, yeah, of course I would walk through Toy Story Land, but I never really saw myself waiting for attractions at Toy Story Land. But now with this animatronic, I think that's my thing these days, is I go on attractions mostly to see new animatronics. I would kind of wait in line for Slinky Dog Dash or get a fast pass to it if I could, just to check out this animatronics, which means I feel like I'm probably not the only person that feels that way, which means that this ride is now going to have an even longer line than I first anticipated it would, since it won't just be a kiddie coaster at this point. Speaking of Pixar at Walt Disney World, the Pixar Play Zone has opened. This is that nighttime event that happens over at Disney's Contemporary Resort, and this is for ages 4 to 12. And essentially, it's a place to drop off your kids, let them have some fun while you go out and have a date night. It happens from 5 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. And there's lots of events for children like the Space Ranger Training, Woody's Roundup, Radiator Springs Racetrack, an incredible super dance party. This is $65 per child, and it includes dinner for the kids. So it's a fairly pricey babysitting. And I was thinking about this, and part of me, I'm not a parent, so, I can't really say for sure, but part of me is like, I don't know if this is a really cool, like, if it would feel like a special ticketed event, like the way we would go to Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party and be really excited for that. I don't know if this is something that the kid would be like, oh, so cool, I get to do this private event without my parents, and then the parents get the date night and it's a win-win scenario, or I don't know if this is like a separation anxiety thing for the kids, and the kids are kind of like, Mom, Dad, don't leave me. I don't know. I'm sure it's different from case to case, and also, it's a pretty wide range of kids. It's ages 4 through 12. So I feel like dropping off some of the younger kids may be problematic for the adults, whereas the kids who are 12 probably feel like this is a pretty cool, like, sleepaway camp type experience that they'll have for a few hours. So in any case, it has opened over at Disney's Contemporary Resort if you want to check it out. Now, Mother's Day is coming up, and if you're looking for something to do with your mother over at Disney Springs, they do have a couple of places that are having special offerings. The first is Maria and Enzos, where they're offering a buffet of contemporary dishes for $35 per adult, $15 per child, and if you're under 2, you eat free, because you barely eat. And, of course, they have endless mimosas and bellinis for $15 per person. Over at Enzos Hideaway, they have a prefixed menu of Italian specialties, so if you're looking for something to do, book that reservation now, because I'm sure that it will fill up quickly over at Disney Springs. Also over at Disney Springs, they have for a limited time, an Avengers Captain America milkshake. It's called the Captain Shake. This is at Vivoli Il Gelato at Disney Springs, and they describe it as a creamy blend of vanilla gelato spun with milk inside of a white chocolate-dipped cone, and it's drizzled with strawberry sauce, topped with whipped cream, and garnished with red and blue sprinkles. Frankly, for me, I think milkshakes are delicious, but every time I get one, which I often do at Ghirardelli over at Disney California Adventure, I feel like I'm just drinking fat. It's unbelievable to me what milkshakes are, but they're pretty grand, and if you want to check this out to celebrate Avengers Infinity War, get it now at Disney Springs. Speaking of Avengers Infinity War, if you haven't heard, I'm sure you have, it is now the biggest movie of all time, with $641 million made worldwide, which shattered the fate of the Furious by almost $100 million, which was holding that place. And this is a phenomenal accomplishment. But it's interesting to me whenever these statistics come out. Of course, from the business side, you're counting the dollars, and that's really what you're counting. But I really, really, truly wish that there was a way where they counted the number of tickets sold, because, the dollar amount, yeah, it's great for business, but it doesn't really show what movie is the most attended, and to me, that is more impressive than the actual dollar amount, because of course through the years there's inflation, but on top of that there's 3D, there's IMAX. It depends on the part of the country you're living in. As far as all these dollars, I just feel like through the years it's becoming easier and easier to beat the previous record. Now, having said that, of course, this is a major accomplishment for Avengers Infinity War. I'm not taking that away from it. I just do wish that there was a way to compare like Avengers Infinity War with Gone with the Wind. I'd be curious to see what those number differences are for number of tickets sold and attendance. Speaking of movies, we got some news about the upcoming Jungle Cruise movie, which they've previously announced will star Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Emily Blunt. Does he still like being called that, or is he going by Dwayne Johnson now? I know like the credits say Dwayne Johnson, but I'm wondering if he gets annoyed when people say Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. If you do, Dwayne, I'm sorry. I'm sure you're listening. But in any case, they've announced that Paul Giamatti will be added to the cast as a crusty harbor master, which I think is a great role for him. Now, Paul Giamatti is a fantastic actor. I love him, but he's one of those actors I don't know if everybody knows by name. Whenever I see Paul Giamatti, the first movie I ever saw him in was Man on the Moon, starring Jim Carrey, and I always think of him for that, but he was also in the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes film, under a lot of makeup. He got a lot of award recognition, I believe, for Sideways, and he's on a TV show called Billions right now. You may not know his name, but I guarantee you'll know his face. You've seen him in something. He's a fantastic actor. And Jungle Cruise is expected to start shooting later this month and through through the summer. Now let's head to Broadway for a little bit and talk about Frozen, the Broadway musical. This past week, they did announce Tony Award nominations, which is the big awards for Broadway, and this will be happening on June 2nd. And Frozen was nominated for 3 awards: Original Score for Kristen Anderson Lopez and Robert Lopez, Book of a Musical for Jennifer Lee, and Best Musical. As I mentioned, you can watch this on June 2nd on CBS. And before we get going, I want to tell you guys about a really cool experience I had this past week. Now, technically, this is not Disney news, but you know what? I'm going to tie it into Disney because I can. Basically, Justin Timberlake and JC Chazet, who were, of course, on the new Mickey Mouse Club called MMC, which was part of Disney Channel when I was a kid, they are members of the boy band NSYNC, and this past week, NSYNC was honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and it was phenomenal. I loved it. I showed up very early in the morning to see the guys get their star. I had a fantastic spot to see them. They also created a dirty pop-up shop in Hollywood over at Hollywood and Highland for 4 days. Guys, I gotta tell you, the crowds were insane. It was 5-hour waits to get into the pop-up shop. People slept overnight to see the guys get their star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. It is really cool. And, you know, I've met some of the guys individually through the years. They're all very nice and they're lovely, and it's always nice to meet them. But there is something about seeing these 5 guys together that is an absolute gift because it's so rare these days. And I feel like as a major NSYNC fan, I mean, if you haven't figured it out by now, I love these guys. They're one of my favorite bands. And I think we all feel a little bit cheated because this band ended very abruptly, not because of a fight. It's not like, oh, we broke up. In fact, I think they still consider themselves a band. They just haven't released an album or gone on tour for a very, very long time. But we feel a little cheated because there was really no announcement about it. It was just one day they're performing and the next day they're not because, you know, presumably Justin Timberlake went off to do his own thing. I don't know. It was wonderful to see the 5 guys together again. And let's just say the crowds were so insane. I talked to a lot of people who flew in from Texas and all over the country, probably all over the world to see this dedication, which is kind of insane if you think about it. But I will say, since the crowds weren't so insane, I think Disney should have a little bit of a flashback. Nostalgia is the rage these days. Let's have another NSYNC concert at Disney's Hollywood Studios, the park that has attendance problems because of, you know, massive amounts of construction. NSYNC concert, Disney's Hollywood Studios. Let's shoot it and air a new one on the Disney Channel. I think that's a win scenario. You're welcome, Disney Channel. And before we get going, of course, we got to chat about the Twitter poll. Now, in this past Wednesday's episode of Disney Coast to Coast, I chatted with my friend Jay about Avengers Infinity War. Be sure to check that out if you haven't already. So this week's Twitter poll question was, which film from the Marvel Cinematic Universe do you like most? Options were Captain America, Black Panther, Spider-Man, and Iron Man. Now, Iron Man came in last place with 17% of the votes, followed by Spider-Man with 22% of the votes. That would have been my personal choice. And then Captain America at 29%, and you gotta say Black Panther at 32% of the votes. It's a pretty hefty percentage, so congratulations, Black Panther. Before we get going, I do want to remind all of you that on Sunday, May 20th, I will be at Walt's Barn in Griffith Park along with the Pizza Planet truck, meeting some lovely folks, and if you haven't checked that out before, Walt's Barn is a really cool place. This is the actual barn that Walt Disney had in his backyard here in Hollywood, so it's a cool experience. Check it out if you can. You can head to DisneyCoastToCoast.com for more information on that. And I want to remind all of you to leave your ratings and reviews on iTunes because by doing that, you're helping other Disney fans find the show more easily. If you've been a long-time listener and you've heard me say this spiel about 1 billion times about the iTunes review and you still haven't done it, what are you waiting for? Now, this episode of Disney Coast to Coast was produced by Philip Elke, who has supported the show through Patreon. If you'd like to become a DCTC producer or gain other rewards like audio commentaries and live stream Q&As, you can find more information at patreon.com/DCTC or head to DisneyCoastToCoast.com and click on the Patreon link there. Other than that, everybody, have a magical day. Bye!
Thanks for listening to Disney Coast to Coast. Have a magical day.
Disney Coast to Coast is produced and hosted by Jeff DePauli. Learn more about the podcast and become a supporter at DisneyCoastToCoast.com.